Life's second act, embracing change. That is the topic for today's video. So if you are somebody who has gone through a massive change in your life, if you're in that interval, in that liminal space, the in between, which is where I am in a lot of different ways and other people are too, then make sure to stick around for this entire video where we talk about this with ChatGPT. So, of course, as would have it, as soon as I go into this, things changed for me. Out of nowhere, ChatGPT no longer has the walkie-talkie function, the like voice responding back on desktop, and I can't do anything about it. And so I spent the last like 10 minutes or so and felt honestly really frustrated by all of these things. And I'm like, oh, there's this irony in embracing change. And honestly, I really want things to be a particular way. I had the whole thing set up, and all of a sudden, at this last moment, things change. So now I am just rolling with it. But I want to be also authentic about the fact that I feel like annoyed and pissed off and allow myself to feel those feelings too, because I think that's part of the authenticity with change. And what we're going to do is we're going to just go to the text piece because that's what it has. And that's what we're going to do. Even if it feels really annoying because I don't really want to do this, but that's what's happening. I can't control what's available. I couldn't even get my screen recording thing to work with the phone because it won't record what ChatGPT is saying to me on there. Even when I turn the mic on, it records my voice, but it doesn't record that. So there's just like nothing is working how I want it to. And I was just talking about my brother this last night with ADHD and perfectionism. Like that can just feel so frustrating, especially when I'm like, oh, cool, I have like time limits and time constraints. I'm going out on a date later, and like there are all these little things to do. And now all of a sudden, this has thrown a wrench into my system. And instead of probably publishing this video when I would want to before I leave for the date, it might have to happen later, which is also annoying. So I'm going through all of those things to say embracing change sometimes sucks, especially initially, where I wanted something to work out in the way that I wanted it to work out, and there's no explanation. It's just gone. And that feels like really frustrating to me because I feel powerless to it, right? I feel powerless to the reality that there is change happening. And I just have to embrace it. And maybe this is what this talk is. Maybe there's not even any ChatGPT in this one because ChatGPT, what it did today was just throw me a freaking wrench and piss me off. And I feel like rambling is feeling really good. And at the same time, learning to, accept that, like, hey, I can't do anything about this. So I'm going to do with what I can. There's a great book by Ryan Holiday called The Obstacle is the Way. And even if you don't read the entire book, the premise, right, like, is a beautiful premise to really understand. And it's this idea of imagining, like, this path that you take every single day, and you're used to getting home. And today there is a boulder in the middle of your path. And you can either choose to, like, weep and moan and cry about how unfortunate, like, this boulder being in your way is, or you can spend your energy more effectively in figuring out how you're going to deal with the boulder. Are you going to crawl over it? Are you going to collaborate with friends to try to move it out of the way? Are you going to try to break it? Are you going to make, draw on it and create beautiful things? Are you going to turn it into your best friend because you are lonely? Like, what are you going to do with it, right? You have to do something with the thing that is there because you cannot do anything about the thing. I think one of the things that gets thrown in our face is the reality of the fact that we are so powerless and so fragile in our life. There are so many things that change, like our bodies change, our ideas change, the world around us changes, and we can resist that as much as we want to. But in my experience, it just creates a lot of pain when we do that. A lot of the way that I tend to think about the world and change and people is, you know, being on like a jujitsu mat, which I've only ever done one time in my life, really. But this idea of instead of fighting, tugging, and pulling, how do you learn to move with the leverage? How do you learn to roll with the way that things are happening and utilize the world's natural changes as something that helps you and fuels your life? It allows for creative potential and change to actually move with and do things, rather than get stuck in how you think things ought to be. Because you can spend your whole life complaining and grinding and bitching about what you want to about how you want life to be. But like at the end of the day, dude, you you just can't do anything about it. We are so powerless in so many ways, and we are also incredibly powerful. A lot of times people talk about this idea of like, you can call whatever you want into the universe. Well, I have never seen anybody all of a sudden go from being 5'2" to suddenly like calling into the universe of being a professional basketball player. So like there are limitations within this world, whether we like it or not. Now, at the same time, we can, I think, personally, like deeply influence the world around us. And we are also influenced by it. I believe personally that when we look at things like manifestation or creating things or magic or prayer or whatever, however you want to look at it, it is more of a collaboration with the divine, with the mystery, with quantum, if you whatever realm you want to look at it. And it is not something that I can dictate. It's not something that I am completely dictated. It's more of a dance, a harmony that we seek to create through our actions, through the way that we actually move forward with the world in a beautiful, orchestrated dance. And you can choose, it's like in a dance, you can choose to lead in a particular way, go in another way. You can choose to separate yourself for a bit, come back. And you can also choose to follow and surrender. And there is, in a really, really great dance, you have all of those different elements. And I think the way more and more that I look at life as a dance, if the world, if life is a song, then it's about how I sing and dance with it. Alan Watts has this really great piece on called Music and Life that the South Park creators originally created this thing to when they were in college. And I will put a link to it in the comments below because it's one of my favorite videos that I talk about very often. In it, he talks about the shift of going from seeing life as a journey, as a pilgrimage, where our purpose is to get to the end, and then we have this thing that we get, whether it's like heaven or money or career or marriage or kids or whatever it is, instead to see life more like a song. The purpose is to sing and dance while the music is being. And I personally love that idea because even this idea of like, the second, life's second act implies that there's like, I don't know, like a first and a third. And like realistically, all of those things are illusion, right? If you look from an Eastern tradition, a more Hindu position, you're talking about it from Maya, right? This idea of illusion, these stories we create up, and oh, that I had a first act and a second act. Like, how many acts have you actually had? If you really paused and looked at your entire life's journey, from like being born to being 1 years old to 2 years old, going to junior high and high school and college, and your first job and your second job and your first love or your first marriage or your first kid that you had or your first big journey, like all of life is a series of continuous acts. Like one of my favorite, sort of reimaginings, if you will, of the importance of the resurrection in Christianity is understanding that at that point in time, this idea of like being reborn was not something that people thought about. It's sort of part of our nature now that we think about like this idea of eternal life that we can be born again. But at that time, it was kind of like this is life, this is how is. But like the idea that every day could be new, that you could die to who you were yesterday and be born into somebody new today. That how things were yesterday does not mean how things are going to be today is a beautiful gift to have when you're embracing this kind of thing. So to circle back with change and the second act, I think the way that I look at it often more is not about having a first act and a second act and a third act. I certainly could frame my life in that way, but that frame is just an arbitrary construction, right? What it is really is an endless series of cascades. Nothing is ever staying the same. Nothing is changing from moment to moment to moment. Life is so fundamentally different, which is part of what makes it beautiful. Part of the reason that I even have my background in my thumbnails as that gradient rainbow is the fact that it represents the constant change that exists in the world that is truth behind everything. And the fact that in that, change, it looks like a single image at the same time, which is how so much of life is. I mean, how often do we look at a leaf and go, oh, that's green? when in reality, there's like 100 different shades, green and probably black and white and brown and yellow in that leaf. When you really take the time to look at it, I mean, just look at your hand for a little bit. You can look at mine if you want to. Like, if I was like, oh, my hand is white, is it? My hand has yellow calluses. My thumbs are pink. Some parts are much very pale. Some of them are almost like a dark brown where the lines are. There's luminescence in it. There's little bits of blue and hints of green just in my hand. So the idea of this being white is an illusion. Even my white shirt, there are gradients within this, right? But our mind can sort of trick us into thinking that we're seeing one clear, distinct thing because, well, in a lot of ways, it's because it's what's easier. So that's my thoughts on change, the second act, embracing change. I think if you accept fundamentally, circle back, that life is all change, all fundamentally uncertain, then you start to accept like life is change, and therefore change is life, that all of life is constantly changing, and that you are already in the dance. Nothing was certain to begin with. And I think when you start to lean into that, you can start to ride the waves like a beautiful surfer, embracing life for how it actually is. But those are just my thoughts, and I'm just a guy on the internet. Let me know what you think about change, the second act, and other comments that you have below. If you have suggestions for the next topic, make sure to leave it in the comments, and hopefully we might have ChatGPT join us future. Thanks for joining for day 10, and I'll see you in the next one.